Hello and welcome to the Miserable Mets Fan podcast. I'm the Miserable Mets fan. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let's get into it. So, Steve Cohen had a tweet last night that went viral for the wrong reasons. Before I get into that, if you don't already know, I think the context of it's a little important. On Sunday, a Mets blog called Mack Mets, I think, or Mets Mac, I forget. I'll put the link in the description. Outlined a plan on how he would blow up the team, blow up the roster. And I think yesterday he kind of published whatever, kind of some thoughts about that on the article and some comments people made about it and kind of the state of the team. And Steve replied to that post with, "All in the future, not much we can do until the trade deadline." And that went viral for the wrong reasons because the team's not playing well, and the article is just about blowing up the future, the article is about blowing up the roster, and it mentions blowing up the roster within the title. And you can read this as sort of like two ways, right? There's the put all in the future, like putting your chips all in, like we're putting all our chips into not 2025 and beyond, and we really can't do much about that until the trade deadline. That's how the public views it, and the way Steve sort of meant this tweet to be read was that's sort of a decision that you can't make now. Like, you can't just on May 16th say, you know what, like, let's blow it up, let's call it quits, and let's move on. Like, there isn't a big enough sample size. We're not going to be like the Marlins. That's not what directly he says. I just mentioned the Marlins because their GM had that quote where it's like, yeah, I don't think we're going to make the playoffs this year. And you've already punted the season, then traded Luis Arraez. But I say that Steve meant that that's not a decision that he can make or that you should make this early in the season, is because he spoke to Andy Martino about the comments and how it got interpreted the wrong way. And he said, quote, "It's way too early to speculate on anything. It's May 16th. I expect to make the playoffs. I know the fan base is frustrated, but it's still early. We're still very capable of making the playoffs. I fully expect to make the playoffs." And this whole situation kind of made me I'm still not 100% sure as to what he meant by it, because within the same article, Andy Martino said, "Cohen told me that he actually meant to send a direct message, which he occasionally does when interacting." And that bit sort of confuses me because, one, I don't believe that. I think Steve is fully capable of managing Twitter, and I'll get into that. But the other bit that I think is more important about that is, all right, let's put away the first thing I said about him not being able, or why I think that DM thing is a lie. Sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. All right, let's say that's the case. Let's say that he misused his Twitter, right? Then I think of that statement on the team as almost like when people say junk statements are sober thoughts. And I mention that because it's almost like what you say in private. If that was supposed to be a private message, then what you say publicly is different than what you say privately. And, you know, when people talk to the media, it's like, I believe in my guys, and like the guy's like over 20. No player in particular when I say that, but it's just more of a, you're going to back your players up when times are tough, and you're going to support them, you know, compliment them when they're doing well, that sort of thing. And what if that was meant to be private, then, like I said, private message, not meant for the public. Anyways, the other part of the reason why I don't think that I think he's fully capable of managing his Twitter is he had some beef with Dave Portnoy, and within one of the tweets he mentions that they should take the conversation offline. And I don't think Steve was gonna like tweet his phone number to Dave Portnoy or vice versa. They didn't have, whatever the outcome of that is, I don't really care about that. I just think that tweet shows that Steve is capable of using his Twitter, plus however many years at this point he's been on Twitter shows me that he is fully capable of using Twitter. Anyways, the other way that this tweet is interpreted, which I think a majority of people think that this tweet was interpreted, is that when you see the all in the future, it means, you know, we're all in on the future of this ball club, and we can't do that until the trade deadline. This is almost like, the more I analyze this, I just keep on thinking of the Bart and the lawyer from The Simpsons. It's like, no money down, and there's like a question mark and like a comma. He's like, oh, they should have put this on it, but it's like, no money down, free consultation or something like that. It's like, no money down, like anyways, that's a great Simpsons bit. One quote I want to mention about the public interpretation of that, the quote, all in the future, not much we can do until the trade deadline, is that Cohen was flabbergasted. This is a quote directly from the article. Cohen was flabbergasted by the interpretation spreading online that he was hinting at the team becoming sellers at the trade deadline. But if you look at this just like optically, right? Like I mentioned with all in the future and stuff like that. But the article within the title of it says, let's be sellers. Like, let's blow up the roster. And like, I don't see how that's such a big leap for everyone to make. I mean, I can't be the only one who thought that initially, right? Like, I think a bunch of people thought that. Anyways, when, little unrelated, but when I saw that all in the future, not much we can do until the trade deadline, I thought of that Skip Bayless tweet where he's like, all in, quote, and then there's like a comma, and it's like his ass, like being like all in, like they're trying to the Cowboys are trying to compete this year. And I thought of that the more. But one tweet that, not that Skip Bayless one, that's a little bit more relevant to this, was I saw a tweet from Daniel Wexler, I'll put it here, that take the Cohen tweet however you will, or any way you want, but I certainly prefer an owner who isn't going to be complacent and fine with a losing, boring, mediocre team. And I agree with that. I think that even if I don't really like how Cohen backtracked it once, like everyone interpreted it like that they're going to be sellers at the deadline. Because maybe it's just me, but like once that thing about Max Scherzer saying that the plan was to compete for 2025, 2026, I think, I forget which year he said, but I thought that was really alarming. I mean, I've expressed my thoughts on that, and maybe they thought it would get him to waive his no trade clause to go to Texas. Uh, I've expressed my opinions on that before, but I still think that that was kind of a important insight into how a possible important insight into how this club's future is going to be. And it's not like this team is playing that great of baseball where you think that they are going to be, excuse me, that they are going to be buyers at the deadline. I mean, there are a lot of flaws with this team that make you think that they're not going to be, they're going to be sellers at the deadline. I mean, I have all this rant stuff prepared on that, but like the walks, the pitching staff gives up too many walks, and then you combine that with the catcher's inabilities to throw out runners. I mean, more teams have stolen or have attempted to steal second base on the Mets than any other team in baseball, and that's because Nito, as a catching unit, I love Baseball Savant for this. The Mets have the most attempts with 39 attempts. This is as of yesterday prior to the game. So this data is a day old, but regardless, they 39 attempts to steal stolen base against them. They are second to last in caught stealing percentage with 10% and second to last in arm strength. So Nito and Narvaez don't really have strong arms. That mixed with another thing. Oh, the other thing I wanted to bring up was Narvaez, 17 attempts of second base on him, 0 caught stealing. His arm strength is 9th worst. His pop time 6th worst. Nito, 16 attempts. He's caught 4 stealing. His arm strength is 8th worst. And he is slightly above average when it comes to pop time. So there's that. But Alvarez, for context, over 6, but his arm strength is 8th best. But overall, Alvarez is on the IL, so that's doesn't really factor into him personally. But it's more Narvaez and Nito in that once they go, they're almost surely safe. And that combined with the pitching staff doesn't throw over. It is a completely preventable thing, knowing that your catchers don't have the strongest arms. There's not much they can do about that mid-season. I mean, maybe you can try fixing that in the off-season. I don't really know. But regardless, if you know that teams are going to steal on you, step off. Like, step off and throw to first every once in a while. Again, I fucking love Baseball Savant for having this data. Sevy has 13 pickoff attempts, 1 successful pickoff. Quintana over 13, Buto over 12, Hauser over 12, Minaya over 6, and Scott is over 2. The lack of successful pickoff attempts is not what bothers me. Ajolis Chapman leads the league with 3, so it's not really like you can have like one really good pickoff game. You know, you get 2 guys in 1 start, and next thing you know, you're like top 10 or whatever. So the lack of successful attempts isn't what bothers me. What bothers me is just not throwing over at all. Like, Minaya really bothered me because 6, you're a lefty. You can almost basically get away with balks as a lefty, and you still only throw over 6 times. Like, Scott had 2 starts, and he's a third of the way to your total. Like, just keep runners honest. And even if, like, they're not, like, known for stealing bases, I think it's good mentally just to keep in the back of your head that there is a runner there and not stepping off every once in a while to throw. I think mentally can make you forget. And I hold Jeremy Hefner accountable for not hammering that home to the pitchers, because Sevy has the most like pickoff attempts on this team, and he was like 30th among qualified pitchers, and he goes down when you factor in like I forget how much further it goes down when you factor in relievers, but regardless, you got to keep runners honest. And that's a huge issue because runners get into scoring position easier, and you allow runs, and you allow more runs. And for an offense that can't do anything really, that's bad to mid, however you want to phrase it, preventing base runners from getting into scoring position is important. And that leads me into the putrid offense of this team, because there's only a few players worth mentioning when it comes to the offense of this team. The only players that are considered above average when you look at like OPS, WRC plus, OPS plus are DJ Stewart, Nimmo, Pete, and JD Martinez. Those are the four guys. Technically, Vientos is above those marks, but he doesn't have enough games to qualify, so I'm not really going to include him there, but I figure it's worth mentioning. Regardless, a majority of this lineup, though, is at best average, and in most cases, it's below average. And you look at stats as a unit, right? So let's include all of the best Mets hitters, as I mentioned before. So let's see how much it rounds up. They are 17th in WRC plus, where 100's league average, so they're below league average, slightly below. And then on base percentage, they are 17th as well. And then weighted on base, they're 21st. So the advanced analytics say that this team is bad to slightly below mid. And there are a few guys that just need to get it going. I mean, Lindor's been bad. McNeil's been bad. Just someone needs to step up, because I don't remember who said it, but you can't have a lineup where no one's hitting. And what really bothers me, which happened a lot last week, or actually it's still this week. Anyways, the NOLA during the NOLA complete game, most of their offense came in that ninth inning. They had, I think, 3 hits the whole game, and 2 of them were in the ninth inning, and your 3 or 4 hits. Anyway, it doesn't really matter because they couldn't get anything going against NOLA. And the other one that really annoyed me was the almost no-hitter by the Braves, the combined no-hitter, where JD Martinez gets the homer with 2 outs to get their first hit. And then, what was it? And then they get 2 more hits after that to get the tying run up to the plate. And then that's when they lose. And it's these almost cock tease rallies, if you want to even call them a rally, because they don't really get it there. They threaten making it a close game, and then they lose. Hitting in the ninth inning isn't bad, right? No, that's not really a bold take. Teams wish they can hit in the ninth inning, right, against relievers. But it is unsustainable to expect that your pitching is going to keep games close for 8 innings, and then in either the bottom of the 8th or top of the 9th or bottom of the 9th, you keep the game close enough to have these late game rallies to hopefully win. It's not a sustainable. You can't win consistently that way. And that's what annoys me. It annoys me that this offense is just a majority of the time sleeping, and then they get the stat pad. Lucas Duda was the king of meaningless homers, where like it would be like 9-1 and he'd hit a solo homer to stat pad. And I mean, literally last night, JD Martinez, this happened where the Mets were down like 10-2, I think, and he hits a 3-run homer to make it like 10-5 or whatever the score was. I had the game off by that point. I just got the little notification that he hit the homer. But the Chris Paul nails the 3-pointer to cut the lead down to 42. And that annoys me because I don't want to watch 7 innings of taking strike 3 or grounding into double plays or swinging on the first pitch when runners are on. That also really annoys me. Lindor does that a lot, where this year he has not been doing well. And yet, this Lindor specifically, but all hitters regardless, this annoys me, swinging at the first pitch. If you're swinging the first pitch, you better get results, and Lindor isn't doing that, and the rest of this offense really isn't doing that, so I don't think they should be swinging at first pitches. Anyways, that sort of leads me back to what happens if this continues, right? Let's just say that the catching is unable to throw out runners, the Mets pitching staff continues to walk runners, and even though that they're able to hold the other team to like 2 or 3 runs, the offense just is asleep behind the wheel, and Jesus lets them crash. And they are out of the wild card hunt. I know currently they're only a game behind, but I still think that's sort of... I don't think you can expect the rest of the NL teams to continue playing the way that they are. Sooner or later, one of those teams is going to go on like a hot stretch. I mean, San Diego's ahead. I think they are more than capable of rattling off like a 7-game win streak, especially if they get a point where they have like the Rockies and like another team back to back at home or on the whatever. I think that whoever's ahead of them is likely to eventually, someone's going to go on a win streak and make it so that the wild card is too far ahead of them if this continues. And then that just brings up what's the plan for the deadline, right? I got a few questions about that. And my thing is, most of the roster is on 1-year deals, like a majority of the roster. And I just think anyone who's a free agent just gone. Like if you're a free agent next year, I think it's just get whatever you can to rebuild and make whatever you can of next year if they continue playing like this. There's still a long way to go, but like something needs to happen. I put it on my story last night, but everyone thought that the Tigers, after losing the first 5 of 6 at home, that was going to be like the low point of the season. But here we are at a lower point where the owner's tweeting private messages and about the state of the team. We don't know what he means by the state of not only what he says, but the direction of this ball club. And oh my God, I was on a good roll too. The state of the ball club. Yeah, anyway, it's about just circling back to a trade deadline and how things are going to be dealt at the deadline. But my thing is that it's like, I think anyone should be, anyone who, I really think you just, if this continues, I really think it should just be a complete fire sale. I mean, last year they sold off pieces and they thankfully got really good pieces in return. But I think if they can't do it again this year, I really think you have to ask serious questions about some of these guys. I mean, Marte's not getting any younger. McNeil has been terrible this year. He's a contact hitter who doesn't make contact and he doesn't get on base. But even though that he doesn't get on base as much, he's still getting on base more than Alonso and Lindor. And there have been times this year where Alonso's taken Javi Baez swings where like the pitch is in the left hand batter's box. This offense just, it needs to get going because for the most part the pitching has been doing its part with the exception of the walks and not being able to hold runners on. The pitching has been doing its part and the offense just hasn't done shit. Like it's just some, like we need some spark and that's why they brought up Vientos, but then that questions who's the backup shortstop and who's the backup second baseman if McNeil or Lindor go down. Just vibes are bad. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, we're going back to the Tigers thing. The beginning of the year, we thought that was going to be the rock bottom, but I put on my story the BoJack Horseman quote where he says he doesn't like the term rocky bottom because he always finds a way to get to a rockier or even rockier bottom. I'll put it here, but that's sort of what like being a fan of this team is. It's just finding a new low. It's almost like every time you think that there's, oh, like this is the worst moment of my fanhood, there's yet another thing. It's like getting swept by the Braves when you only needed one win to clinch the NL East, and then it's like that September, and then it's like the Wilpons, the whole Wilpon administration, and it's like Jason Bay and Jen Lowry and the Luis Castillo pop-up drop and Tom Glavine's terrible start in the final game of the 2007 season. And then there was the whole month prior to that where the Mets collapsed in September. And then there's firing Willie Randolph. Right, I think it was like right before they got on the flight back from a West Coast trip. Oh, what else was there? It's just ever like there's always like a moment. There's always like you ask what's the worst moment to be a fan of this team, and it's like everyone has their own answer because there's something like Duda's wild throw. That's another one. Harvey being pulled from the game. Alex Gordon's homer in game one, I think, of the World Series. What else? Like just, I mean, like that whole, most of that 2015 World Series is like that for me. But like it just rattles on, and I guarantee that there are people that guarantee that there are gonna be comments like, "How could you forget? How could you forget when whatever?" Like there's always some terrible moment, and I forget the point of this, but the rockier bottom. Anyways, yeah. So I almost can guarantee at some point this year there's gonna be an even rockier bottom when something stupid happens. Oh, speaking of stupid, I don't understand the they Adrian Hauser got warmed. He was supposed to start yesterday, and he got warmed up on Tuesday. He threw like a few pitches, and they're like, "Well, he's burned for tomorrow. He can't start tomorrow." It's like if you were planning on starting him tomorrow, then why have him get warmed in the bullpen? It was like the 8th inning when he got warmed, and then they had to call up Joey Lucchesi, and then they had to bring him back down, or they sent him down in another corresponding move today. But like I didn't understand that got lost in the midst of things. I mean, a lot of people were glad that he didn't start because He's he's had a terrible season, and he's not as good as a starter as he is a reliever. But I mean, if he is your pinch starter, your starter in an emergency situation, and you knew you were going to use him tomorrow, why? I don't know. Just vibes are bad on this team and the state of the club. Anyways, that's the episode. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And here are my socials. And thank you.